All right, the Democrat Party's race grift is dying. Let's check it out. Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. This morning, the Supreme Court took a major step toward reversing one of the Democrat Party's most powerful racial scams, their exploitation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which essentially states that you can't deny an American citizen the right to vote based on race or skin color. This protection was important 60 years ago when it was drafted, but in the modern era, Democrats have corrupted Section 2 and used its protections to gerrymander voting districts based on race, which is totally unconstitutional. Essentially, affirmative action in gerrymandering is a good way to think about what this is. Affirmative action in gerrymandering, which means racism is okay if it helps a minority group. And that's how they have corrupted the Voting Rights Act. It is purely antithetical to everything the Constitution and this nation stands for. We have seen this all over the country, all over the South, including in Louisiana, where this case originated, delivering ridiculous race-based gerrymandered maps that you have seen many times in multiple states. Take a listen to this from CBS.
This decision is a major one under the Voting Rights Act. It will go well beyond Louisiana. It's going to make it, based on what we're seeing so far, it will make it harder for state officials to draw up these so-called majority-minority districts, which have been used for decades and have increased black representation and minority representation in Congress.
It'll make it harder to increase black representation in Congress. Right there is the problem. We have framed affirmative action in a positive connotation in this country for a very long time, for far too long. Increasing black representation in Congress means decreasing other representation unnaturally. Reverse racism is not the answer to any of the problems, especially a racial problem we had decades ago. We've been told society should be colorblind, right? That all are created equal. That was Martin Luther King. That was the dream, right? Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act has been corrupted and used to trample that vision for far too long, going the other direction. From Clarence Thomas in this decision, this court should never have interpreted Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act to effectively give racial groups an entitlement to roughly proportional representation. And yet that's exactly what it did. And he's right. It is wholly un-American in every possible way. And the process of ending this begins today. The political implications could be massive with this. Of course, as you would expect, that was most of Trump's focus when he was asked about it today.
I also think that the ruling can create more Republican-held congressional seats in the South.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's the kind of ruling I like.
I want to go back to the Supreme Court ruling on the Voting Rights Act. I know you said you haven't seen it. Basically very much narrows the Voting Rights Act.
Was it considered a win for who?
A win for Republicans.
I love it.
But my question...
This is a very good... We can end this news conference right now. I want to read it.
My question...
Wow. Some states don't need to redraw, and some do. I mean, I know what the concept of the ruling, I just haven't seen the result.
So there's the president's reaction today. Current predictions say Republicans could gain up to 12 congressional seats once the implementation of this ruling reaches all of the states that have been scammed for so long by this race scam, the manipulation. Once that ends, it could add 12 seats for Republicans that Republicans should have had all of this time. The cable news lefties are going berserk over this, as you'd expect. Take a listen.
Now, the Supreme Court has said, go ahead, state legislatures, draw districts, maybe even redraw districts in ways that lock voters of color out of power. That is to undo the Voting Rights Act and what it did for this country, namely make it into a multiracial democracy.
So that sounds so bad, right? The way she talks about it. No matter how virtuous she sounds in that, it is just a wholly unjust way of looking at the world. You don't manipulate the system to force diversity on it. This country works because our system lets the best lead, regardless of anything about them, regardless of color or anything else, which means someone of color can get as far as they want in this system. It's all about what you bring to the table. Would the NBA be better if we forced the league to be 60% white to match the country? Would that make the NBA better? Race-based gerrymandering is Marxism in practice, manipulating the system to put undeserving members of Congress into power. It is no different than forcing diversity into any other arena, the same as forcing airline pilot diversity or any other ridiculous Marxist experiment we have seen in recent years. But the good news is, think about how fast all of this racial toxicity in this country is being erased, because it is. 2 years ago, the Supreme Court ended race-based college admissions. That was a huge moment. It was the right thing to do. And of course, just like they are today, the left went nuts.
The United States Supreme Court once again turning the arc of justice away from equality and back to the early 20th century.
Affirmative action in admissions has been a powerful tool towards progress, a tool that the Supreme Court decided to demolish in what Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson called a tragedy for us all.
This is a tragedy. If you care about inclusion and equal opportunity and you care about folks who don't have much and are trying to make it today, this is a tragedy.
Trying to help mediocre white students who feel outcompeted and blame black students for, quote unquote, taking their spots.
You know what affirmative action led to? It led to the decimation of the Ivy Leagues, where they now have to change dramatically their testing, the way they test and the way they grade students in order to make it work. That's why this is so bad. And now extrapolate that out to all of society when we do this everywhere. This is why this has to end, and it is ending. We're ending all kinds of discrimination and the toxicity that it brings. It's the end of pretending that this is a racist country as well, the end of a Democrat Party grift that has decimated the soul of this country for far too long. So many different things are collapsing at the same time, and it's all moving us in the right direction and away from a very bad couple of decades, several decades that we have seen because of this. The next step is helping black voters to see the light in this country and pulling them away from a very corrosive Democrat Party that hoards their vote, that controls them with so many manipulations and gives them absolutely nothing in return. That's the next step of this. In our inner cities for far too long, lying, race-baiting Democrat politicians have traded black Americans food stamps and subsidized rent for their souls. That also will end now as well. All right, Harmeet Dhillon, the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at DOJ, played a key role in this case. Her law group filed the amicus brief in the Supreme Court, and she joins us now. Harmeet, good to see you. It's a huge day. Just want to get your initial reaction.
Well, first I want to say we partnered up with the Solicitor General's office, and I was privileged to sit through one of the most incredible legal arguments that I've seen in my career. The SG's office did a great job in carrying this across the finish line, and the arguments that we made in our brief at the Department of Justice are the main arguments that are used in Justice Alito's opinion here in this important landmark case. And so let me tell your viewers a little bit about what happened here. Louisiana has been in this long nightmare of getting sued again and again by both sides in this situation. After the 2020 redistricting, they drew maps that, as per normal, kind of protected, incumbents in their seats. That's pretty common. That's allowed. And they got sued by the NAACP over that. And so they drew a new set of maps with two majority black districts in them. And one of those districts, the one at issue here, is like meandering across the entire map of the state, which is kind of crazy. Then there was a challenge brought to that. And so they got sued again in federal court, saying that the use of race and that line drawing was illegal. And that's what the United States Supreme Court held today in a 6-3 opinion. And this is really important because you're going to see a lot of fake news out there about how this is terrible for minorities. What it is recognizing that in 2026 in the United States, the reasons to use race for line drawing deliberately that occurred to remedy discrimination in the South 50 years ago no longer exist in America. People vote not according to race anymore, but according to a number of different factors. And the only circumstances in which, under the Voting Rights Act, the courts are going to step in and say that a particular district is illegal is if race was deliberately used to discriminate, and that's not the case.
And we, I mean, for a very long time, to make up for the sins of the past and the discrimination of the past in this country, we have now allowed. For decades now, we've allowed discrimination against, I think, the majority, against white people in this country, which is where the lawsuit came from, and those are the ones who fought this thing and won. That is ending now, and this is just the latest case of it. We saw the same with the college admissions case as well. It's like a shift that we're seeing in race in this country, where you can no longer, you can't be discriminatory towards any group, which is the way the Constitution is written. We're going back to that.
You're so right, and it's incredible to be sitting here at this Civil Rights Division at this particular crossroads in time where our government is systematically dismantling the edifices of racism of the past. And our country should be really proud of the fact that we have overcome these historical challenges. We have fixed the problems, and we have tools in place if those problems reoccur. But we have to acknowledge the reality that today, having this sort of race-conscious line drawing is really antithetical to our Constitution and to our values as a nation. And, whether it's in employment, in education, in this racist line drawing in government contracts, we're systematically putting an end to that, and I'm really proud and excited to work with all my colleagues here at the DOJ to do that.
You guys did a great job. Harmeet, it's good to see you as always. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Dr. Carol Swain, legal scholar, tenured professor at Princeton and Vanderbilt Universities, joins us now. Jack Brewer, chairman of the Jack Brewer Foundation. Good to have you both here. Dr. Swain, I want to start with you. Most of our black reps in Congress are furious over this decision. They call it racist. They call it a step backward. How do you respond to that?
Well, they were wrong in the 1990s when they tried to draw race-based districts that were struck down by the Supreme Court. They argued that once those districts were struck down, they would not be reelected. Everyone that ran for reelection was reelected without having districts that were overwhelmingly black. And I would argue that political party is more important than race. In fact, I wrote a book back in the 1990s, and that book has proven to be true. And it's been cited 3 times by the Supreme Court in voting rights cases. And so for people who are acting as if they're shocked about the Supreme Court saying that race should not be used in redistricting, they just need to go and read those Supreme Court cases from the 1990s. The court has been very consistent with holding that position.
Yeah. Jack Kagan writing that the suit has laid the groundwork for the largest reduction in minority representation since the era following Reconstruction. Here was Hakeem Jeffries with the Congressional Black Caucus today. Take a listen.
This fight is not just about Black America. It is about the future of American democracy itself.
Obviously, this ruling today has a devastating blow to our democracy.
Affirmative action is gone. Diversity is gone. Equity gone. Inclusion gone. Racial tolerance gone. The Voting Rights Act largely gone. But guess what, extremists? We're still here. That's right. And we're not going anywhere.
Jack, your reaction to that. What do you think of this?
The only thing that's gone is their money train. And that's their whole motivation is to try to fool black people that they're still victims. I call this Liberation Day, Finity. I'm so happy. I hope this entire ruling snowballs and goes across the entire country. You know, it's enough is enough. These same districts that they're pushing to divide by race, the kids can't read and write. You look at the reading and math proficiency in these districts, these black kids can't read and write. You look at the crime, violent crime for juveniles has spiked 138% in the state of New York. You start looking around and seeing half of our kids are locked up in jail because we have no fathers in the homes. And so all all their policies have done, all this race baiting and spreading up these districts within race has done is break up the black family, taking our men out of the homes and locked our men up in prison. And I hope that this is just the beginning of a new day in America. This is Liberation Day. Yeah. How fitting for this to happen on the 250th year of this country. It's time to change the approach. It's time to get some conservative values back into black America. And I think this is the type of ruling that it takes to get that done. Yeah, as I said, the real oppression is coming from that party, and they mask it as something else, but they have traded the black community, their souls for food stamps and subsidized rent. And the decimation they have done over the last 6 decades of the black community has been very visible if people would just pay attention to that. And Dr. Swain, I think the real test is this on this case. If an inner city seat had been gerrymandered to give whites representation, Ketanji, Sotomayor, Kagan would have all voted the exact opposite way. But the 6 conservative justices, their vote would have remained the same.
I agree. And I can tell you that every single one of those incumbents will be reelected. Unfortunately, they always exaggerate. And so their seats are not in jeopardy. And the Democratic Party, they vote on the basis of partisanship. They handpick whoever they're going to give the seat to. And so no one is jeopardized, unfortunately. They have no reason to clean up their act. And we do need to celebrate the fact that we're moving back towards the original intent of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Equal Protection Clause that prohibits discrimination against all Americans. And so it is a day to celebrate.
It is certainly that. Dr. Carol Swain, Jack Brewer, good to have you both. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
God bless you.
All right. United Arab Emirates leaves OPEC, a major win for the United States in the Middle East and against the oil cartel, as Trump says he's sitting back and starving the Iranian regime out of power with his blockade. We've got the EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin to talk energy up next. And then later in news from the left, a Michigan Democrat running for Senate caught deleting old tweets that complained about how much she hates the people in her own state.
This was America in 1980, held in contempt by foreign nations. Across the world, people were losing their freedoms. So many countries thought America had seen its day, but we knew better. So we stopped complaining together and started working together. Today, America is strong again. We're looking to the future with confidence and pride. America's best days and democracy's best days lie ahead.
This little light of mine has been dark for quite some time. Then I let in the light to help see more of the light inside of me.
I needed more from my antidepressant, so my doctor added Caplyta, proven to provide greater relief from depression symptoms than an antidepressant alone, building on my progress without starting over. Weight gain and reported sexual side effects were not common.
Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of death or stroke. Caplyta is not approved for dementia-related psychosis. Call your doctor about new or sudden mood changes, behaviors, or suicidal thoughts right away. Antidepressants may increase these risks. Report fever, confusion, stiff muscles, which may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may be permanent. High cholesterol and weight gain may occur, as can high blood sugar, which may be fatal. Common side effects are sleepiness, dizziness, nausea, dry mouth, feeling tired, and diarrhea. These aren't all the side effects.
Ask your doctor about Caplyta.
Help see more of the light inside of me.
Started doing the Heimlich maneuver. That didn't work. We had people around us that were in the medical field, and they said, hey, you're doing everything right. Then people started shouting, get the life back, get the life back. Probably been a minute and a half, 2 minutes without any oxygen. He was completely gray. She put the life back right on his face, did it. He gasped for air. She did it again a few seconds later, and the grape hit the back of the mask.
And the ambulance would not have been there in time to save Jeremiah. He was gone.
Be prepared. Go to lifeact.net today.
The blockade is genius, okay? The blockade has been 100% foolproof. It shows how good our Navy is, I can tell you that. Nobody's going to play games. Militarily, we've wiped them out. They have no military left. It's all, the Navy's at the bottom of the sea. The Air Force is never going to fly again. Now they have to cry uncle. That's all they have to do. Just say, we give up.
All right, so the president's blockade is working pretty much just as he expected. He wants to starve Iran's regime out of power. That process playing out now. It won't take much longer, is what's been indicated to us. On Tuesday, Trump met with top oil CEOs and cabinet officials at the White House to work on the other side of that. Axios reporting the group discussed steps we could take to continue this current blockade in Iran for months if needed and minimize the impact on American consumers. Let's get oil prices down while blocking Iran from any money coming in. Because who needs the Persian Gulf after all? You've seen this map. It's amazing to watch. A record number of empty oil tankers heading to the United States to pick up their oil. We are the largest producer of oil and gas in the world, and this is how we're going to play it. It's kind of brilliant. It comes as our Gulf ally, the United Arab Emirates, is actually leaving OPEC this week as well. It's a massive victory for the president against the global oil cartel. Iran was actually one of OPEC's founding nations in 1960. Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, other nations as well. OPEC has controlled about 80% of the world's crude oil reserves. Not anymore. The Guardian calls what's happening here the great energy pivot. Supplies of U.S. crude leaving American export terminals have climbed by a third to a record 5.2 million barrels a day. So there's a lot of things happening at the same time here. U.S. weekly exports of jet fuel have doubled to an all-time high as well. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin joins us now to talk about all this. So some really big moves here, sir. It's amazing to see all those Persian Gulf tankers heading for the United States now.
Yeah, recently the White House had a forum in Tokyo, and it brought together 17 Indo-Pacific countries and their energy ministers and other leaders of their government, as well as a lot of U.S. companies. And because of what's going on right now in the Middle East, all these Indo-Pacific nations were talking about how they want to diversify their supply chain and they want to look to the United States. They see us unleashing energy dominance. They know the supply that we have, and they're doing the math. They're thinking, okay, for a long time, we've been relying on an oil that will take 28 days to get to me, and I don't have freedom of navigation. Or I could go to the United States, it'll take 8 days, and I'll have total freedom of navigation, and it's a no-brainer. They want to diversify their supply chain, and they're cutting deals with U.S. companies.
It is amazing. I want to dig a little bit more into this. I first want to play, though, our War Secretary Hegseth going after Congressman Seth Moulton on Capitol Hill earlier today regarding the blockade and the war in Iran.
How is this war going? Do you think we're winning?
Militarily on the battlefield, it's been an astounding military success.
No, but are we winning the war?
Absolutely.
Okay, so do you call Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz winning?
Well, I would say the blockade that we hold that doesn't allow anything to come in or out of Iranian ports.
Okay, so
always
we've blockaded their blockade. So they blockaded us, and then we blockaded their blockade. That's like saying, tag, you're it. Or, you know, if President Madison had said, well, the British just burned down Washington, but don't worry, we're going to burn it down as well.
He's arguing the blockade with a bit of a blockhead. I don't really know where Moulton was going with that, but let's talk about this for a second. Crude is still at $108. Trump had this big meeting, and my question for you is, are we going to be able to continue the blockade and also lower prices here domestically on fuel? Because I think that would be the ultimate game, right?
Yeah, and now listen, as the Environmental Protection Agency guy, I'll tell you, we tap into our energy supplies so much better for our environment than so many other parts around the world. But we have seen in the last 15 months since President Trump came into office, this wasn't something that just started, last 2 months. We are rolling back so many Biden-era rules at the EPA, where they were trying to target, strangulate out of existence entire sectors of our energy economy. And we're unleashing that, and it's impacting beautiful, clean coal. It's the oil and gas industry. It's getting natural gas pipelines built. Small modular reactors are getting there's ground being broken all across the country. There's so much money that's being invested into U.S. energy infrastructure all across this country, and it's going to continue that trajectory. On top of that point that I just said, where now they're looking to us, if you want to start talking midterm goal and long-term goal, all these countries are saying, you know what, I just want to do business with the United States now instead of that Middle Eastern country.
I guess my question, though, is, and that's all great, but if let's say Memorial Day weekend or July 4th, we're still blockading in Iran, is crude still over $100, or is there a way to get that number down? Is there a way to get enough of those ships to come to the United States, avoid the Persian Gulf, and still without that 20% of supply, get the price of oil down?
Yeah, and you're talking about something that's still a few weeks away. I mean, I can't predict for you the developments with the talks that are going on. Yeah. But what I do know is that we have a very talented national security team on that front, and they have been achieving all of their military objectives, and that has been moving in the right direction. While we at home domestically, looking at the implementation of rules and working with private companies and tapping into our resources, that aspect of it on the energy front, we have been crushing, and really since the moment President Trump was sworn back in.
Yeah, no, I know the EPA is kind of tethered to this, a little bit out there. I just wanted to ask you anyway. I wanted to throw this at you before I let you go, though. You've been testifying all week. You had a pretty legendary moment that I was cracking up at with Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, claiming that your budget proposal for the EPA reads like a climate change denier's manifesto. You weren't having that. We're going to let this play out because it was so good. Take a listen.
Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, where does it say anything about fighting global climate change? Loper-Bright, Supreme Court case, you familiar with it?
No, maybe others are.
Loper-Bright says that we as an agency don't have the authority to get creative.
You do not have the right to say climate change does not exist.
I understand you're upset that you don't know what Loper-Bright is. Do you know what the major policies doctrine is?
I'm upset because...
You know what the major policies doctrine is?
You know what, let me just
You're a member of Congress. You should know. Michigan versus EPA.
Whoa.
West Virginia versus EPA.
You know, you're here because you need money from us. So halt for the second and wait for the questions and answer the questions.
Well, I answered your question, and you didn't like my answer because you don't know what Loper-Bright is. You're asking me about Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, and you don't read it. You don't know what it says. I do my homework.
Really?
You're just somebody who likes to have the microphone on. You don't know what the major policies doctrine is. Your message.
Can you just tell us what it's like dealing with people like that? It was fascinating to watch, and you schooled her.
Yeah, following the best available reading of the law. I mean, it's really straightforward. And the Supreme Court case in Loper-Bright overturns the Chevron doctrine and says no longer can I look at law and say, well, it doesn't say I can't, so I guess I can. That's actually the way it used to be. And if you're a member of Congress, you care about separation of powers, if you don't want agency overreach, then you should have been very much following Loper-Bright, and you should have been cheering it, not just aware of it. And here we are, getting asked a question where it's frustrating the member of Congress that I won't just do things that aren't authorized in law, that I won't just push forth trillions of dollars of regulation without there being a debate and a vote in Congress. Listen, without apology or regret, we'll follow whatever Congress passes, but we're not going to hoard power with unelected bureaucracies in Washington, D.C. That was the way that passed, but not the Trump administration.
No, it's not. That's quite a moment there. The EPA Administrator, Lee Zeldin. Good to see you, sir. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, James Comey's indictment for an Instagram photo might sound ridiculous, but context really is everything. And that's up next.
A new president is sworn in. America's greatness is restored. Millions of Americans are tuning in to Newsmax. Even President Trump says Newsmax is terrific. Watch Newsmax or download our free app on your TV or phone today.
I lost 110 pounds. You couldn't tell it all because of my excess skin. Sono Bello changed that in one visit.
Introducing the new Lift EX, the just one visit, total body transformation everyone is talking about.
I am super happy with my results.
I decided to give Sono Bello a try. Look at me, I have a silhouette. You can see my waist.
Lift EX is Sono Bello's breakthrough 360-degree body lift alternative. Our body contouring experts sculpt, tighten, and lift your stomach, waist, thighs, and backside, all in just one visit with less downtime.
Sono Bello targeted the areas diet exercise could not do. I found me again.
Sono Bello has over 50,000 five-star reviews, and Lift EX is exclusively available at Sono Bello, America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist. Book your free, personalized consultation today. Easy monthly plans make your best body more affordable than ever.
This year is my year thanks to Sono Bello.
Call Sono Bello for your free consultation today.
Mike Hammond of Signal Relief. We've helped nearly 700,000 feel relief in their back, shoulders, and knees with our technology. But for many of us, it's our feet that hurt. And when they hurt, our walks get shorter, activities are skipped, and the moments we love start slipping away. That's why we created the Signal Step, a patent-pending insole built using the same proven technology people already trust from Signal Relief. Signal uses no drugs. There's nothing on the market like it. It's relief without the side effects. It's reusable, fits virtually into any shoe, and in a recent study, over 85% felt relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Feel relief with every step. If you're hurting, go to signalstep.com and get relief today.
New Cologuard Plus?
Yep.
Colon cancer screening delivered to your door? Check. No prep? Check. Non-invasive?
Checkity check, check.
And it detects 95% of colon cancer, similar to colonoscopy.
Checkity check.
The Cologuard Plus test is for people 45 plus at average risk. False positive and negative results may occur, not for those at high risk. Introducing Cologuard Plus. It's the box that checks all the boxes for screening. Ask your provider or request Cologuard Plus online.
Mom jeans. She passed them down to you, but who passed them to her? Good question. You can thank generations of amazing women for those genes. Discover their lives and what led to you with an Ancestry Family History membership. See your roots and where those stories came from with an Ancestry DNA kit. Put them together, and there you are. Save now during our Mother's Day sale.
This is Fubo. It's your way to watch ESPN and other top sports networks. Plus, get coverage of your local teams all year long. Start watching at FuboTV.com.
Welcome back. Former FBI Director James Comey surrendering himself in Virginia today after his second indictment, accused of threatening the life of the president with his 8647 seashell Instagram post. 86, somebody, common slang, to take him out, to kill them. 47, of course, the 47th president of the United States. Comey claims that he found these shells on the beach this way. That's fairly unlikely. And then he deleted the post, claiming that he didn't really realize what it meant. Also unlikely. He's indicted for 2 counts. Both carry a max of 10 years. Here was the president's reaction.
If anybody knows anything about crime, they know 86. You know what 86? It's a mob term for kill him.
But do you really think your life was in danger?
Probably. I don't know. You know, based on. And Comey is a dirty cop.
Stretch, right? It's an Instagram post. Democrats say that this is political targeting. Well, they would know. For years leading up to this last election, they tried to bankrupt the president. They tried to take his businesses away from him. You know what's as ridiculous as a federal arrest for a seashell Instagram post? Claiming that Mar-a-Lago is worth $17 million to try and get Trump. You know what's as ridiculous? Trying to jail a former president for paying off an alleged dalliance from 20 years ago to keep quiet. Concocting a sexual assault civil trial with a loony old woman, changing the rules in the state so you can do it, and then basing it off of a crazy old lady who doesn't remember the year that it happened. That's as ridiculous as an arrest for a seashell threat. Or how about the mugshot? An arrest for setting up alternate electors, which would have been needed if their case in Georgia had been won. How about making a former president get a mugshot and making him go all the way to Atlanta to face a judge? As ridiculous as a seashell indictment, I would say. Victor Davis Hanson, senior fellow at the Hoover Institution, joins us now. Roger Stone, target of James Comey's FBI. His home raided by 29 armed FBI agents. Gentlemen, good to have you both here. Roger, your reaction to the double indictment here?
Well, first of all, the crime of threatening the life of a president is far more serious than the false charges that I was accused of, lying under oath to Congress about Russian collusion that we now know definitively never actually happened. So I do have to question why Comey was allowed to peacefully turn himself in instead of having 29 heavily armed FBI agents wearing night goggles and brandishing fully automatic assault weapons surround his home at 6 o'clock in the morning with a CNN camera crew in tow. This is the second time for Mr. Comey. He only slipped the punch in the Eastern District of Virginia because 3 federal judges violated both the canon of ethics and their oath of office by dismissing the prosecutor, claiming that she had been incorrectly appointed. They're wrong, by the way. That will be won on appeal. But in that case, Comey lied under oath about whether he had directed a third party to leak privilege or sealed information to the New York Times when there was an email message to a colleague of his, Dan Richmond, which he told him to do exactly that.
Victor, you know, when I first saw this, I kind of scoffed. I'm thinking it's an Instagram post. It seems ridiculous. But then I actually thought about all of the nonsense that they put him through. And then I thought, you know what? He's a New York developer. And if this is retaliation, it's retaliation. I can't blame him for that. How do you see it?
Well, I think the earlier indictment was a much stronger one. He had 245 times he lied to House Oversight Committee and said he didn't remember. And then they said, well, the prosecutor was not properly authorized to indict him and statute of limitations. But the more you think about this, he's a Machiavellian character, so he wants to threaten the president, but he wants to use a vicarious accidental finding to do it, so then he can say either he doesn't know what 86 is, and of course the chief law enforcement officer does know that. Of course. And second, nobody ever finds messages like that. And third, there's a little bit of wrinkle to this because when the Attorney General's office announced the indictment, people were kind of startled. But then he said this was a long investigation and we examined a lot of messaging. So what I'm getting at is if there is something more, and what would that more be? If he said something in a private email that didn't come under attorney-client privilege, and it said maybe to his friend or his daughter, this was cool, or this is neat, or this is a good way to threaten the president. If he did any of that, and I think these people are adept enough in the DOJ that they would know that he would squirm out of this ostensibly unless he's referred to it in communications, because they did mention that. They said we've done an exhaustive investigation, months long, about his communication. So let's withhold judgment until we find out if there's a little bit of background to it.
Well said. I got 20 seconds left. Roger, you think that this one sticks?
I'm not sure, but he's facing far more serious charges of seditious conspiracy in the Southern District of Florida, where the documents declassified by Tulsi Gabbard absolutely prove without any question that he was party to a seditious conspiracy to remove a sitting president. And is where he should really go down.
That's interesting stuff. Roger Stone, Victor Davis Hanson. Gentlemen, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Tim Walz humiliates himself yet again, trying to attach himself to the FBI raids on Somali fraud businesses in his state this week after he sat back and watched this for years. Congressman Brandon Gill on the governor of Minnesota up next.
I promised you that I would devote my energies to fighting fraud in our state's human resources program. Tonight, I want to update you on that progress.
Greg Kelly over at Newsmax. The Newsmax people have been really, really terrific. Newsmax has been terrific.
President Trump is right. Millions are watching Newsmax and Greg Kelly. Tune in tonight.
My friends, I come to you today on behalf of the Jewish people in Ukraine whose lives have been completely destroyed. Family and loved ones brutally killed. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is inside of Ukraine, providing emergency food and supplies to tens of thousands of people.
I am shocked how many elderly people came here. They're afraid, and they realize now that there are more people than boxes.
For just $25, you can help rush an emergency food box to the elderly Jews in Ukraine. Many of them are hungry, frightened, and alone. Today, there's a special opportunity to double your gift's impact. Call now, and your gift's impact will be doubled.
The people of Ukraine are caught in the crosshairs of war. Many of these precious people are Holocaust survivors, elderly Jews who are sick and dying. They have no food, and we must reach them now before it's too late.
The world is in a war again. I am alone. I'm afraid of the bombs. I'm scared. I am old. There is no food.
Just $25 helps rush emergency food to elderly Jews in Ukraine who are in urgent need today. Please call, scan, or go online right now.
I will not starve. Thank you, good people.
We can be the hope to the Jewish people who are suffering in Ukraine. Your help is desperately needed now.
Thanks to generous fellowship partners. Call now and your gift's impact will be doubled.
Finally, your GLP-1 is as easy to take as a mint, no needles. Compounded tirzepatide is a mint-flavored tablet that dissolves under your tongue. It helps curb appetite and reduce cravings, including for sweets and carbs, making it easier to eat less and move intentionally towards your weight loss goals. Getting started is easy and surprisingly accessible with a quick online physician consultation.
Save $50 with code SLIM at noneedles.com/slim.
I am a big believer in super beta prostate. You'll notice less urges to urinate, and you won't be getting up at night for so many bathroom trips. I wouldn't say it if I didn't truly believe it.
When my mother heard about Pure Talk's latest offer, she said, "Michael, that's a third of what I'm paying my current provider. How's that even possible?" I said, "Ma, your current provider spent $12 billion last year on advertising and promotion. Pure Talk hired me to make a few commercials on my iPhone. That's why you can get unlimited talk and text with plenty of data on a crazy fast 5G network for just $25 a month. You're welcome. Pure Talk, everything you need, nothing you don't."
I promised you that I would devote my energies to fighting fraud in our state's human resources program. People who have ripped us off are getting caught, and they are going to jail, just like today. I've said the buck stops with me. And as I know some of you will take that as an open invitation to play politics with every incident of fraud that takes place here in Minnesota, even though I have to tell you, the statistics show it's happening in red states more than here, but so be it. But taking responsibility doesn't mean just taking the blame. It means taking upon ourselves to fix the problem. You gotta want to stop it, not just talk about it.
He's talking about the scandal that ended his political career. That's a soon-to-be former governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz. The last state address for him after yet another terrible day had the FBI raids over 20 so-called businesses across Minnesota on Tuesday. Somali fraud schemes galore. A scam Walz allowed likely helped to conceal as well. There have been allegations of retaliation against whistleblowers that tried to call this stuff out from the state. They didn't want to hear it. They did not want to go after it. Billions of taxpayer dollars stolen, initially exposed by independent journalist Nick Shirley, as we all know. Tim Walz, just another political phony now, claiming he's been fighting this fraud all along with the DOJ. In reality, he helped to conceal it is quite likely. Congressman Brandon Gill joins us now. Your reaction to Tim Walz, so high and mighty in his last address?
Oh, it's refreshing to see a Democrat who finally cares about fraud, the same fraud that he perpetuated for years and years and years so that he and other Democrats could get reelected. The same guy who made sort of an implicit bargain with the Somali community in Minnesota, who was saying, "I will look the other way, you defraud taxpayers. As long as you vote for me, I'm fine with it." I'm happy to see he's finally found religion, although we obviously know it's because of the Trump administration has forced his hand, and everybody knows about this, and it's humiliating.
That's exactly right. Wanted to get you this week because I wanted to ask you about this incredible moment, you questioning a pro-abortion advocate earlier this week in the best way possible.
What's your favorite type of abortion?
I am an advocate for patients having access to the full realm of reproductive health care.
I want to get your take on how much you like these. The first type is called a suction abortion. This is when the cervix is dilated and a strong suction, 29 times the power of a household vacuum cleaner, tears the baby's body apart and sucks it through the hose into a container.
I stand by my former testimony.
That sounds kind of gross, doesn't it? After dilation of the cervix, a sharp looped knife is inserted into the uterus. The baby's body is cut into pieces and extracted, often by suction. Do you prefer that method?
I would prefer to talk about the reason the hearing was called.
It's uncomfortable to hear this, isn't it? It is. I think it is, because it's barbaric and evil.
Something else, you know, I mean, it's so fashionable to be pro-abortion until you're faced with the reality of exactly what it is you support.
No, you're exactly right. It's easy to be smug and condescending whenever you're talking about reproductive health and these barbarian Republicans who simply don't want to do what's best for women. Now, what's obvious, though, is whenever you confront these pro-death, pro-abortion activists with what they're really advocating, which is a gruesome dismemberment often of little babies, they don't like it either. I think they realize that this is horrific and it is evil.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they call it women's health care, because it's probably one of the most critical euphemisms the Democrat Party has, and they have so many, don't they? One final thing for you. We talk a lot about migration into this country with you. The Supreme Court heard oral arguments earlier. The Trump administration's attempt to end temporary protected status for Haitians and Syrian nationals. Sonia Sotomayor arguing it's racist to prefer migrants from places like Scandinavia versus Somalia or Haiti. Forgetting, though, the simple fact that when you look at crime rates, when you look at the idea of a public charge, which means they do not put into the system nearly as much as they take out, that it makes perfect sense, and it's actually constitutional to prefer some people over others.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing racist or discriminatory about the simple fact that 65% of Haitian non-citizen-headed households in the United States are on welfare. That doesn't make our country stronger or better off in any way. It's also not racist to recognize that 91% of those who are covered under TPS, who are Haitian, in the United States right now entered the country illegally. 69% of them under the Biden administration. In other words, they were part of the massive waves of illegal aliens pouring across our borders. And the American people, as a sovereign people, as a sovereign country, have the right to determine who comes into our country and who doesn't. And these people never should have come in to begin with.
Exactly right. Congressman Gill, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Next up in news from the left, a trans actor out with a new animal documentary.
Homosexual behavior in nature is one of the best kept secrets.
Some wireless companies say that they stand for something. What exactly do they stand for, and why won't they say it out loud? Let me tell you what Patriot Mobile stands for. They stand for the lives of the unborn. They stand for the Second Amendment and the right to protect yourself and your family. They stand for our veterans and first responders who sacrifice so much for our freedom. Make the switch to Patriot Mobile today and support a company that doesn't just say they stand for something, but one that stands for the things that matter the most.
My heart has experienced life-changing wins, losses, and countless miles. To keep living at my speed, I trust Cunol CoQ10. CoQ10 is the #1 cardiologist-recommended supplement for heart health. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Use daily dermatologist-recommended Gerrymand and reduce the appearance of bruises. Get Gerrymand Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle.
Spring. Things out here have gotten a little too comfortable. It's time to run it. Run it until the grass becomes a lawn. Until the hedges duck for cover. Then run it again. Right now, get up to $50 off select AK battery tool sets. Steel.
At Bright Star Care, our nurse-led care anticipates needs before they are voiced. We'll be there.
This little light of mine has been dark for quite some time. Then I let in the light to help see more of the light inside of me.
I needed more from my antidepressant, so my doctor added Caplyta, proven to provide greater relief from depression symptoms than an antidepressant alone, building on my progress without starting over. Weight gain and reported sexual side effects were not common.
Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of death or stroke. Caplyta is not approved for dementia-related psychosis. Call your doctor about newer sudden mood changes, behaviors, or suicidal thoughts right away. Antidepressants may increase these risks. Report fever, confusion, stiff muscles, which may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may be permanent. High cholesterol and weight gain may occur, as can high blood sugar, which may be fatal. Common side effects are sleepiness, dizziness, nausea, dry mouth, feeling tired, and diarrhea. These aren't all the side effects.
Ask your doctor about Caplyta.
Help see more of the light inside of me.
Dale, you really need to get that colon cancer screening. Yeah, it's been forever. Dale, we can do it with just a blood test. Shield.
Shield is for people 45 plus at average risk, not high risk for colon cancer. Ask your doctor about FDA-approved Shield.
Welcome back. Time now for news from the left. This could be problematic here. A Democrat running for Michigan Senate appears to really hate the state of Michigan. Mallory McMorrow looks like a smug one, doesn't she? Quietly deleting thousands of old tweets that show her as a coastal elitist that despises those boring flyover states like the state of Michigan. Total disdain for the rural Midwest she has, lamenting ever leaving California, dreaming of the coasts breaking off from the middle of the country and leaving them far behind in these old tweets that she has been deleting rapidly as she tries to run to represent Michigan in the Senate. In 2017, Mallory responded to a tweet saying California should have its own diplomats to make sure we don't get nuked because of morons from the other side of the country. She prompted her to say, there are days like these that make me miss California even more. She thinks California is the pinnacle of society, of everything. That's how she believes. And despite her permanently relocating to Michigan in 2014, repeatedly referenced voting in California's June 2016 Democrat primary, urging voters to register for it as well. This smug little redhead is going to have a hell of a time winning that seat now. I think it just blew up right in her face. I'm here for it. Next up, trans actor Elliot Page narrating a new documentary called Second Nature, looking at queerness in the animal world. Take a look.
For centuries, we have been told that when it comes to gender and sexuality, all these millions of species follow a certain set of rules.
Homosexual behavior in nature is one of the best kept secrets.
Not only do many species illustrate homosexuality and gender multiplicity, they also illustrate sex transition.
There is endless diversity in nature, and the old stories we've been taught deserve a second look.
Okay. So it's kind of an interesting thing because there's a fine line between doing something good, which is making sure that there's gay kids in the world. We understand that. You don't want them to feel like they're left alone on an island somewhere. There's one side of looking at it like that. And then there's the side that I think we've reached where we're going beyond that now and we're trying to brainwash every kid into being gay or trans or something else. And that, I think, is the problem with where we are at today. Next up, The View thinks the Trump ballroom means he's never going to leave the White House.
It's not your building. It's not yours. This belongs to the people of the United States of America. Building this ballroom basically means you're never leaving.
Exactly. That's my question. Is he planning to live there?
I guess so.
Yeah, he's never going to leave. Let's let him just keep on going with that one. And finally tonight, in news from the left, California's failed high-speed rail project. It started off as an estimate at $33 billion. By the way, a reminder that you never take any estimate from the government seriously at all. Probably multiply it by a few times over. From $33 billion, they have now arrived at an estimate of $231 billion, which is about the annual budget for the entire state, by the way, just to build this stupid rail that's never going to get built and probably will never be used. Lawmakers calling it now for it to be scrapped. They've already spent $14 billion building track in the very isolated areas of the state where they could actually push it through because there's nothing else there. Could be one of the most wasteful government projects you will ever see, and an indication of why we have to keep Gavin Newsom the hell out of Washington, D.C. Speaking of which, coming up, an absolutely fire campaign ad aimed at saving Los Angeles.
This is where Mayor Vass lives. This is where I live. They let my home burn down.
You know Rob Finnerty. He's smart, bold, and stands strong for your values. Rob is fighting for you. Watch Finnerty weeknights only on Newsmax.
It's 2 a.m., your fever spiked and you're miserable. Here's your options.
Urgent care, closed. ER, slammed, and you'll spend hundreds of thousands in both. Telehealth, yeah, but the pharmacies are closed.
That's the reason why we keep emergency medical kits at home.
It has doctor-prescribed medication like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other antibiotics and antivirals. You can treat flu, pneumonia, strep, sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
Because if you're sick in at night, traveling or stranded, you don't want options.
You want what is inside this kit. No waiting, no pharmacy, and no copays.
Just schedule a quick telehealth call.
And that's how you feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
Every family should have this kit, and here's how to order yours.
Order online in minutes and use the promo code to save $45. Your doctor-prescribed kit ships fast to your door, packed with medications to treat over 30 conditions. So when something hits, you're ready. And a wellness company telehealth doctor is always there if you need guidance.
Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America. Most investors believe their IRA, 401k, and bank accounts are reliable and safe. But what if our economy becomes so dire that you're restricted from accessing your own money? The fact is that should your bank be in trouble for holding bad loans, the burden could fall on you to help bail them out. Even more concerning is that U.S. financial regulations allow banks to impose withdrawal limits on your hard-earned savings. But there's something you can do about it. Our team at Swiss America has a report called The Secret War on Cash. Learn how to protect yourself with assets that can remain outside the control of banks and other financial institutions. For over 40 years, Swiss America has been one of the most trusted metal firms in the country. So don't wait. Call or text the number on your screen today for financial peace of mind in these uncertain times.
You know, waking up in the hospital from all that stuff, there's got to be some kind of purpose for me here. I need to get over myself and start helping others. Total Towers came in and gave me and my family a home. I've regained quite a bit of independence from that amazing gift they've given me. I can't begin to thank Total Towers for everything they've done for our family. It means so much to us, a life-changing gift. Thank you. Please donate $11 a month at T2T.org.
Mike Hammond of Signal Relief. We've helped nearly 700,000 feel relief in their back, shoulders, and knees with our technology. But for many of us, it's our feet that hurt. And when they hurt, our walks get shorter, activities are skipped, and the moments we love start slipping away. That's why we created the Signal Step, a patent-pending insole built using the same proven technology people already trust from Signal Relief. Signal uses no drugs. There's nothing on the market like it. It's relief without the side effects. It's reusable, fits virtually into any shoe, and in a recent study, over 85% felt relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. So what are you waiting for? Feel relief with every step. If you're hurting, go to signalstep.com and get relief today.
Finally tonight, campaign ad for L.A. mayor that should skyrocket the odds for Spencer Pratt. Take a listen.
Here, where Nikki Raman's $3 million mansion sits. They don't have to live in the mess they've created where you live. This is where I live. They let my home burn down. I know what the consequences of failed leadership are. That's why I'm running for mayor. For my sons and the rest of us Angelinos that want to stop these corrupt politicians from destroying our city.
Finnerty's up next. Apparently, Finnerty loved his television show.
No.
He fixes his tie.
Yes, I did. No, he will not come on Newsmax. We've reached out to him several times. I know you've reached out to him, and I think he's afraid that he doesn't want to be identified as a total conservative in a state like California.
Yeah.
But Spencer Pratt, look, the network is behind you. I don't know that for sure, but we know something needs to change in California politically because Democrats have ruined that state. Rob, we both lived there.
And we know what happened to Caruso when he tried to act like a wishy-washy moderate and he somehow lost that election that he should have won for the same position, mayor of Los Angeles.
We lived there together a long time ago. Well, not together, but
not together.
All right.
At the same time.
Yes.
We got to quit doing this.
Maybe. We'll pick this up tomorrow. Finnerty starts right now.
Information.
truth is freedom, is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.